Very well. So today's speaker is Andreas Prasinos. He is a classical philologist, a graduate of the Philology Department of Classics and Greek Philology in National and Kapodistrian University of Athens and University of Amsterdam. His specialization concerns the classical world and specifically ancient Greek and Roman literature. He has taken part in several scientific conferences in universities and research organizations in Greece and abroad, and has published a number of scientific articles as well as scientific books. His research interests concern the works of ancient Greek and Roman writers of the classical and post-classical periods. He works as a professor in educational organizations and as a scientific researcher at the National and Kapodistrian University of Athens. In your hands. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the introduction and for the hosting once more. It's always my honor to collaborate in this spectacular and very interesting courses of Multi-Classical Association. So I decided today to sacrifice, in a way, actually, to speak about a research I really loved when I started doing my master thesis, and now after some time, I decided to expand in a way my research on this field. My research was actually about Medea. So in my master thesis, I tried to show in what way, in the hypothetical trial that is made by Euripides, via his work, his play, to show how and in what way the audience and actually the judges of classical Athens of 5th century BC would judge this case and if they would be in favor of Jason or Medea. So in general, to introduce the whole problem we have in scientific research nowadays from the past, is the fact that most research, and amongst them I am also one writer who in the past tried to show the victimization of Medea by Jason, and what we can conclude after studying the several articles and the several books have written on this matter, we see that most scholars tend to show pity and sorrow for Medea, and we try to look upon her in a way of victim of the male hero person and the male toxicity of the era. And we try, using the feminist theories, which of course I'm not against, but on this topic, I think we should show it in a different way. We try to show how the person, this character called Medea, was actually biased in a way, ethnically, genderly, by this person who was a native tenant of ancient Greece, while Medea is a barbarian and also a woman. So we see Medea as an identity, a person who really got fooled, literally fooled, and at the same time scammed by a hero. And if we actually see several articles that have written on this matter, we see people, amongst them Todd, who tries to show that Jason was actually this worst husband, as he's characterized by scientific research. And we saw him like a utilitarian man, a selfish person, a man who took advantage of a female character who was, because of the characteristics and the phenomena of this time, took advantage of a young girl who met in Aetes, as we read in Apollonius Rhodius, and he tried just to serve his own appetites, his own aims, totally using her as a means to win and receive from Colchis the golden fleece. However, what I showed in my master thesis was that that is not the case. And actually, if we see some articles that have written all this time, we see that just some scholars, very few scholars, try to show how Jason was not the person who actually took advantage of Medea. And what we read in Euripides' tragedy, which is the main and first literally text we have on Medea and her character and her myth with Jason, we see that Euripides structures his whole tragedy in a way that an actual trial takes part. So Medea, as the person who wants to accuse Jason, stands in front and puts forward in the audience who attends the play all these blames, all this accusation against Jason. While Jason, on the second part of the second episodion of the tragedy of Euripides, is the defendant who tries to show that all these blames from Medea are nothing more than her way to charge him of what he was not actually responsible for. And what we really see, and we'll see later in his speech, is that he was not actually this male toxic character who wanted to abuse physically, emotionally, mentally the poor girl called Medea, but she was actually influenced and in a way bewitched by his own beauty, and she was the responsible for being taken advantage and taking advantage of her own self to serve her beloved one. So, in order to actually see the whole case, I think it's better to make a very brief introduction on Apollonius' work Argonautica. Argonautica is a Hellenistic epic written after Euripides' tragedy, and Apollonius, in this epic poem, tries to show the first meeting between Medea and Jason. The information we take about these two characters is that the three goddesses we already know from the Apple of Aetes, the reason why the Trojan War was actually, according to the myth, started. We see that those three goddesses try to fool Medea, and they want Jason to be the winner of this myth, to be the person who will actually receive the golden fleece. And they think that the best way to achieve this very big and very important trouble that he's into, in order to show his own heroism, is Medea. So Medea is from the beginning by Apollonius of Rhodes, the means not of Jason, but of the goddesses themselves. So from the beginning, God Eros, the son of Aphrodite, goes and shoots with his arrows the heart of Medea. And that's why in the beginning of the story, in book 2 of Apollonius Rhodius, when we see the first meeting between Jason and the king of Ilg, the king of Colchis, we see that Medea, when looks at Jason, is actually bewitched by the beauty and the majesty of Jason. And we never see in the epic itself the very beautiful characteristics of this handsome person called Jason. He's just a hero. But actually the arrows are the reason why he's so much influenced by his own beauty, by Jason's beauty. So from the beginning, we have to make clear that Medea is actually the victim of Jason. No, she was actually the victim of goddesses. And as the time flows in Apollonius of Rhodes, we see that Medea in Argonautica is a person who always doubts and has second thoughts on what to do. She wants to help, but she has at the same time leave her family, leave her palace, actually betray her own homeland, her own family, and help the person who never promised her before the fourth book of Apollonius to be with her in the whole life. She was the person who actually approached him and told him that I will help you, after, of course, his own request to her to provide him with the actual potions that could put the dragon in sleep. And in the fourth book, when we see Medea meeting Jason once more, we see that she is the person who gives herself in this help. In the whole myth of Jason and Medea, it's Medea who says, I will help you. Why? Because I'm actually in love with you. Because I feel like you are my husband. That you are the person I want to be with. You're the person I want to sacrifice my whole life for. And that's how the whole plot, not only in Apollonius, but also in Latin literature and in Euripides' Medea, we read that she gives herself for this love, the love which actually is in her head, that we can conclude and that we can deduct from Apollonius of Rhodius Argonautica. And on this myth, which after I repeat Euripides, we see Euripides to structure his own tragedy. And in the beginning, we see the nurse, who is the first person introducing us to the whole story of Jason and Medea. And of course, nurse is, as called in Greek, trophos, the person who is responsible to be the actual nanny of the children, of the babies of Medea. So this is the person who acts like the slave of Medea, who has a mistress she has to support. And of course, Jason is the victim now of the verbal accusation of the nurse. But the nurse shows us the first indicators of why Jason is not this victimizer, this worst husband, as he's called in research, this utilitarian male character who doesn't care about his family. What the nurse says right from the beginning of the word, her words start that Argo, so the ship with Jason went to Iolcos to call his, should never pass the sea, should never have arrived in Colchis, should never been there, because this was the reason why the whole myth and the whole sorrow and betrayal of Medea starts. It's not Jason, it's actually the fate. It's the fate who leads Jason to go to Iolcos, who leads Argo as a ship to pass all the problems, all these obstacles that Argonauts had in their trip and actually be in the soul of Colchis. Should the fate not be like that, the ship would never be in Colchis. Argo would never be in the soul of Colchis, and Jason and Medea would never meet. So from the beginning, we see a small indicator that actually from Apollonius of Rhodes, we can expand that the fate is why Medea has to get over what she goes through. It's not Jason, it's the fate. And fate is something that has been influenced only by gods themselves. But at the same time, because nurse is, as we said, close to Medea as her mistress, we see some points that lead us to think that, yeah, Jason actually betrayed his family. And betrayal is the main accusation of Medea and the nurse herself, and also the chorus later. And what we see is that Jason is a person who took advantage of Medea, so he, in a way, forced Medea to commit crimes, kill people, and now, after having used her as a means of serve his own aims, he just abandoned her. He just doesn't care about her. He just left her behind. And what we see is that the nurse is actually influenced, and she has such a sorrowing heart because Medea is in the palace crying. She's in her own house crying, shouting, threatening. And what we read is that the nurse is afraid of Medea's very capricious and so much spontaneous, but in a bad way, character. She committed all these crimes because in the past she was in love with Aetes, and she killed her brother, father of the king of Corinth, of the two daughters, king of Corinth, betrayed her family because she was just a capricious person who got in love with Jason and who now wants to take revenge. And that's what the nurse is afraid of. So from the beginning, we see that Medea is not this innocent little girl, young person, poor victim we read in Apollonius Rhodius. She's actually a very, very able witch, a witch who has power, who is related with Hecate, the goddess of the underworld, who is related to black magic, who didn't hesitate to kill her dragon, her pet, as I wrote in one article, her brother perhaps, also to kill people who helped her in Corinth. So Nurse herself, who is so close to Medea, gives us these small details that Medea is not innocent, is not poor. She just wants to serve her, not selfish character, but what she had in mind. She had in mind that Jason loved her in the way she loved him, and now she feels the betrayal. And as we go on with her own argumentation, we see what I want to share with you, which is actually the second chapter of my master thesis. And I want to quote some passages from Euripides himself. I think that you can see the ancient text. So I have the translation here. Translation is my own product in this work. It says, "For false faith exists in oaths, nor do I want to know if you believe that the gods who ruled before are no longer sovereign, or if new laws were made for men now, because you feel that you are against me sworn." That's her first actual argument. That you gave me an oath, you took an oath in front of gods. And when you are in a pyrrhus, when you actually break this oath, and when you don't follow this oath you already took, you'll be punished according to ancient Greek laws. And that's a very important aspect of her. But were there actually oaths? What we see in many, many articles, and in between them, we can see Fletcher about ancient drama, and actually Maclair, and more, much more actually, in Sommerstein and Torrance, we see that there is no oath at all. This oath that Medea talks about and tries to create, this anosios, this character of Jason who doesn't care about gods or divine laws, there were no oaths. We never read in Apollonius of Rhodes or in Euripides himself nothing about oaths. What we read in Apollonius of Rhodes is that Jason promised just to take Medea with him in his trip. She was just a follower. She just has, and she's actually allowed to embark in the ship of Jason in Argo, but Jason is not responsible for her. He took no oaths. Oaths was actually a part of ancient Greek marriage, but we see no marriage. There is no marriage to take oath. This fraud pistis, this false faith, there is no faith. because there was no oath, because there was no marriage. Medea actually abandoned her own house. It was her will, and she decided to leave behind her family, her homeland, in order to follow her beloved one. But God, no God blessed this wedding because there was no wedding. So we don't see actually this ceremony of ancient Greece. And these oaths have no actual content in them. We don't know what kind of oaths this would be. And even if there are oaths, we don't have the text themselves of ancient Greek oaths read in marriage to understand why Jason was not allowed via divine laws to do all this to Medea. So her first argument has actually no legal base. It lacks of basis because gods were, according to her, protector of her wedding, but there was no wedding. And at the same time, let's bring back to our mind what I said in the beginning. In Apollonius of Rhodius Argonautica, we see that three goddesses, so divine characters in the epic poem, are those characters who put Medea into the front as the victim of Jason. So even though there were oaths for which we don't have any indicator, gods were actually against Medea. They were in favor of Jason. They wanted Jason to be the hero, to be the man, to be the winner, to achieve his goal, not Medea. Medea was for gods just a pawn. So, this word epirkos that is used by Medea herself, and anosius and asevis, sacrilegious, disrespectful, perjurious, which are the three words that Medea used, have actually no legal basis. Because this loyalty and the divine status of the oath has no actual legal content behind. The second argument that we see in Medea is actually her inability to turn for help or shelter. She accuses of Jason not because he abandoned her, or as he says, because he abandoned her, but because she gave her no way to save herself. She has nowhere to go. She's actually a person who is forced by King Creon to leave. But now she has to find a place. She has to look for a shelter. And she has no shelter. Because, as she says, προδούσα και πάτρα ναυκόμη. I betrayed my family. I left my homeland. I killed Peleus. I made his daughters to kill him. It was her choice. I made them to kill. I wasn't made by you. I made them to kill her father. I made them to kill their father. I killed my own father, brother, and I made Peleus' daughter to kill their brother. She tries to accuse Jason of something that in the structure of the sentence itself, we cannot read. Προδούσα, I betrayed, and I came here afikomin after my having betrayed. And what she says, she not because of you, but in favor of you. That's what we read in Mastronarde. When he wrote his commentary on Medea, he really argues that this see, this dative, this case, this dative case of the word see, the personal pronoun, is not actually the cause. It's not because of you, it's in favor of you. So I, as Medea, had the will to do something in favor of you. And at the same time, we never see any force. And now we see the third very important argument of Medea. You left me for a new mistress, and you betrayed my friendship. Philon. Philon, so friends, so people who were actually your family. You betrayed your wife, you betrayed your children, and you found a new mistress. But there was no wedding, as we said. So actually, in ancient Greek theater, the audience has in mind that there was no wedding. They never heard anything of an actual wedding. And at the same time, they are people who made the same, who did the same, who actually based the same phenomenon in ancient Athens. They could easily cheat on their wives because they were allowed to. In classical Athens, you were allowed to cheat on your wife. The only thing you couldn't do is bring the new mistress in your house, the house you were living with your wife and your children. So, actually, Medea's very fanciful argumentation starts to collapse. She has no content in the oaths. She tries to speak about gods, while actually, as we read in Apollonius, and as we see in Euripidean tragedy itself, through the verses of the nurse, gods were actually those people who lead the fate to urge Jason to go there, who help the fate to make Jason take the golden fleece, and who force Medea through the arrows that Eros threw in her heart to help Jason. And at the same time, we see that her actual inability to find a shelter is not because of Jason. Jason never told her to kill her brother. Jason never asked her to make Peleus' daughters to kill him. It was actually her decision. She was beloved. She was bewitched. She was in love with Jason. And Jason never promised anything. Jason took a young girl, an innocent girl, but related to magic, with him in his trip because she asked for, because she had no choice. She already betrayed her family because of this love, and she had nothing to do. She was afraid. What we read in Apollonius of Rhodes is that she actually covered with her veil her own face. She lifted up the down part of her dress, covering her face because she was afraid leaving Colchis, that her family would grab her. She didn't do it because she actually wanted Jason, but because she was afraid. And she thought that Jason would actually protect her. And he did. He made a family with her. But there was no wedding. And at the same time, if we see the economic of friendship, a very important book in this research, we see that Jason did everything he should do for her and their children. Here he abandoned her, but the whole plan, as he gives it to us through his speech, says something different. And that's why now I want to share Jason's argumentation on this matter. After the whole legal argumentation, or as legal as this could be, of Medea, we read Jason's aspect, Jason's point of view. And he tries actually to defend himself. Saying the first thing, you never saved me. It was not you, Medea, who saved me. It was the gods. You gave me help because gods actually wanted you to. It was the goddess Aphrodite, who sent her son Eros to throw the arrow in your heart. And because of this arrow, you were in love with me. I never loved you. You never helped me. You helped me because the gods wanted to. So you never benefited me. And actually, in these verses, we really see the selfish character of Jason, because she actually benefited Jason. Perhaps Jason never asked for it, but she did it. And that's why perhaps Jason has a sip of second thoughts while saying it. And he tries to actually make it better, to make amends on this. And he says later that now perhaps you helped me, but I also was a good friend to you because I was sovereign and sophos. So I was actually a sober, wise person. I never abandoned you or our child, or our children, actually, because they had two children, two sons. I never abandoned you. I was actually next to you. And what I tried is to find a new mistress and extend our family. Because what I wanted for my whole family, my whole ethos, my whole house, was a big house with a lot of sense, a lot of children, a big generation. Because I have this in my heart, this love for children, this love for my inheritance. Of course, all these can be seen and read as Jason's tricks in order to fool the judges or fool us as audience, but at the same time, it could be actually a true story. Perhaps really Jason wanted to serve his aim, and he gets in love, but actually tries to marry this time with the wreath, the wedding wreath and the wedding dress, the veil of the daughter of Creon. And at the same time, we see that all this plan to marry her is at the same time related to his children. What he says to Medea is that I want to benefit you. What was the phrase exactly? For my children, a great friend. I want to benefit you. In what way? If I have the daughter of Creon as my new mistress, I can have money. I can have financial support for you. I can actually help my children and you. And what he brings us in mind via his verses, through his verses, is the concept of philia. What he says is that when somebody is poor, nobody wants this person. Everybody avoids them because when you're poor, you have no power in the society. You are just a person that everybody wants to be away from because they have nothing to gain from. Actually, what he wants to abandon, his poverty. He wants to be in a higher class, in a higher quality of life. And that's what he wants to provide with his wife and his children. Or that's what he defends. But he wants to do all these because of them, because he was this great philos, these great friends. And even though that was not the case, we still see that the audience would read it like that. Because the audience was actually males. Male people could attend the whole play. They didn't know anything about mediation, rather what those characters say. And we, as researchers, cannot really be sure, be certain about what they thought. We can just speculate and say, yeah, people of this era were doing the same. They could cheat on their wives. Wives and females had no ability to go to the court. They could not go against the favor and decision of their husbands. But what when, as it says here, your husband wants to abandon you? He never wants to abandon her because he never got in love with her. Everything was in her mind. She got in love with him. She was expecting from him to do what she did for him. But Jason never promised it. Jason never told Medea explicitly, I will kill for you. I will be with you forever. I will support you all the time we are together. What he told her in Apollonius Rhodius, so not in the tragedy itself, is that, yeah, I will be your protector during the trip. I will go with you in the trip. You can embark in my ship. You can come with the Argonauts. And to protect you from what? What we think, what we read in Apollonius Rhodius is so vague. I will be your protector. Protector of what? I think that, as many scholars have already said, protector of your family. Protector of those people who will be against you. And really, from whom else? Who could Medea be afraid of? She was a powerful witch. She could kill, create pain, cause all damages that she wanted to. She was ready to Hecate, the goddess of the underworld, and she killed Jason's new mistress. And not just killed, not just murdered, but actually fooled her before. Just what she did to a dragon guarding the golden fleece when she approached him, singing him a lullaby to put him in sleep. Not giving him the potion yet, but first fooling him, treating him in a way that he could trick him. And that's what she did. But what else? What else she could be afraid of? She's just a woman who wants to put charges on Jason, but with arguments that have no legal basis, no content, because everything is in her imagination. The facts are that he treated her not in a good way, but according to ancient Greek theater, ancient Greek society, ancient Greek audience in a way that would be accepted, in an acceptable way. He was with her, he found a new mistress, he never asked a divorce, but he was ready, as he says in the end of his speech in the second episodion, ready to give her money to go away with her children, or leave the children with him and live away to Athens or wherever she wanted to be. And again, he treated her as a friend. But Medea didn't want that. She was jealous of the new mistress and she killed the new mistress. But we never see that Jason was the butt of the story. In the feminist theory, yeah, we could say, yeah, this male toxic, this guy who treated her, who took advantage of her, just to serve his own aims. But in what way he did it? In what way an ancient Greek male person could think of it when Medea says nothing with actual basis? And even the nurse, her closest person, says different. So this Medea, who becomes the hero of the story, nobody can doubt. But Jason is not the anti-hero. He doesn't lack of masculinity, but at the same time, he doesn't have the masculinity, the male toxicity to take advantage of Medea and use her. He was a person who served his aims because the gods decided to, and when the time came and the chance appeared for him, it was him who decided to take the golden fleece, make a marriage now, and not just be with his wife in the Ecos, in the Hoikos, in the house, but still friend to her and their children. I think we can conclude it with that, so we can stay on time, and if we have some questions or observations.
Thank you very much. That was really, really interesting. I'm going to stop the recording now. So